Hello there, I'm Randy Cross, and welcome to Unsafe Spaces. Got a good show for you this week. Very heavy on football, college football, NFL football, just football in general. But something came to my attention just the other day, in fact, yesterday. There's a columnist in the New York Post named Phil Mushnick. He writes about the media, and I'm reading this article, and he can be a little... go figure. He can be a little caustic. He can be a little sarcastic. He can be, well, it's stuff that I kind of enjoy. That's right up my alley. But he came to a very, very interesting point that I hadn't thought of. And I think it's worth pointing this out. Now, are you familiar with a gentleman by the name of Michael Kendricks? Michael Kendricks is a linebacker who now plays with the Seattle Seahawks, was with the Cleveland Browns. Well, he has been accused of, and if I'm not mistaken, has admitted to an inside trading scheme that netted him some $1.2 million. Now, he has a really good chance of being convicted and doing some time for this. And he's been indefinitely suspended by the NFL. So there's that. But what Mushnick pointed out was it wasn't that long ago that Phil Mickelson, the pro golfer, was also caught up in an inside trading controversy out in Las Vegas. Whole thing about stocks and getting tips and whatnot. And he was ordered to pay the SEC, by the SEC, was ordered to pay back money to the government and make some restitutions, all in a total of approximately $1.2 million. So one guy, on one hand, might do hard time for insider trading for about $1.2 million. The other guy, the pro golfer, has the other connections, and he gets a slap on the wrist and repays the money. Does that really seem like that's sort of equal justice? And thank you to Phil Mushnick from the Post for pointing that out. All right, now we'll move into the interview section of the show, and I'm going to be joined by Cole Cubelic. Cole is a former Auburn offensive lineman, works for ESPN on the sidelines. He was doing the Vandy, Georgia game this last weekend. He's a voter in the Joe Moore Award. In fact, he's one of the pillars that holds that thing up. He, along with Aaron Taylor and Duke Merriweather and a few others, do a fantastic job putting that together, recognizing the best offensive line in college football. So with no further ado, let's head to the interview with Cole. All righty, welcome. As promised now in the interview, we'll be talking with Cole Cubelic, Auburn grad, sideline reporter, Joe Moore Award voter, and a fellow offensive lineman. And this will be 2 out of 3 weeks, talking to O-lineman with Aaron Taylor a couple weeks ago, and now Cole. Cole, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Randy. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Now, where were you this weekend? What game?
Coming up this weekend, I just came from Vanderbilt at Georgia, and I'll have Ole Miss at Arkansas in Little Rock this weekend.
Yeah, what did you think of Georgia?
I like Georgia a lot. It's obviously Sam Pittman is one of the best offensive line coaches in college football. It's always cool to visit with him and see his group, and he's got a really young group, and they've been a little bit banged up. Andrew Thomas is one of the better tackles in the league right now, and he's a true sophomore. He got hurt a little earlier in the season. Cade Mays, a true freshman, fills in for him. And now Ben Cleveland, their star right guard, is banged up with a broken leg. He'll be out for the majority of the season, and Cade Mays has bumped down in to right guard. Solomon Kennedy gets banged up in this game at left guard, and another freshman comes in from him. And they have maybe the most impressive physically looking specimen at right tackle that I've ever seen. Isaiah Wilson is all of 6'7". He's all of 340. And I'm telling you, Randy, he is less than 18% body fat. He's got a long way to go as an offensive lineman. He's a redshirt freshman, but They've got a center named Lamont Galliard, who is a guy that I'm impressed with. He's kind of plays past his ability. Sam told me last year they put everybody in front of him to try to beat him out. Nobody could do it. He wouldn't let anybody take the position from him. He's a leader of that group. So they're a good offensive line when they're at full strength. I think they have a chance to be a great one at full strength. But you look right now, they got a senior and really and truly 2 freshmen and 2 sophomores, even though you could say 3 freshmen, 1 redshirt freshman. So 2 first-year guys and 2 second-year guys. It's as you know, it's tough to build that continuity when that's happening and you're having to interchange guys. But I think by the end of the season, they'll be a formidable group. They get good help from their tight ends. Isaac Nada is a guy that you really like to watch. Charlie Werner's a guy that's playing really good football this year. So that group helps. And I think they have more weapons. I know they lost Michelle and Chubb, but I think across the board, they have more weapons that can do more things for them this year than they did last year. So they're really doing a nice job. Jim Chaney, the offensive coordinator, is of spreading the football around, kind of creating space, allowing those playmakers to play in space. They haven't gone out and just tried to run right at an opponent yet and sort of impose their will. They haven't been asked to be that team just yet because they don't have to be.
Yeah.
And defensively, I think they're much faster on the back end, much more athletic on the back end. Obviously, you lose Roquan Smith and John Atkins in the middle of your defense. It's going to be tough to replace that. They have a lot of athletes, I think, up front defensively, but they're not the same kind of group. So I'll be very interested to see them against some better offenses that they're going to see later this season. And then obviously this weekend, they're at LSU. None of those kids have played there. No, they don't know what it's like. They don't know the personnel. They don't understand what it's like going to play in that venue. So that'll be a challenge for them. But I like Georgia a lot. I think I would have Georgia in my top 3 right now. I think they're a well-rounded football team. They're just maybe not on the level that they were a season ago. But this is kind of where we are in college football right now.
Yeah. Is it almost unfair, though, to compare some of these teams, especially in the SEC, to Alabama? Because of
it's unfair to compare any team.
Yeah, because of the status of that passing game. Because they got a Big 12 passing game, and they've got an SEC running game and an SEC defense.
Here's the thing with Alabama, Randy, and I agree with you 100%. I have there was a time this season when I thought it was Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, and maybe in Oklahoma. And I look at it now, and it's Alabama and everybody else. And I think it's a step down to Ohio State, and then maybe I would have Georgia on that same level. But then I think it's another small step down to say Clemson on that next tier. I thought Oklahoma was on that tier, and then obviously they go down. So we're sort of running out of options of teams that we think can even be competitive with Alabama this year. And it's going to be interesting to see who can improve the most towards the end of the season to maybe even be on their level or close to their level. But I'm not ready to say it's the best offense that I've ever seen, because you can look at 2008 Florida, 05 USC, 2010 Auburn, 95 Nebraska, whatever you want to look at. But this may be the most versatile offense that I have ever seen. I think the impressive part is when you look at this Alabama football team, Randy, they can go 2 tights. They can go 2 backs. They can run some stuff that you ran in San Francisco a while back.
Yep.
And, look very West Coastish. They can kind of play some bully ball and line up and run inside zone at you if they need to. And then they can go 3, 4, and 5 wide.
Yeah.
And they have, by the way, they have 2 quarterbacks that can play. They both have different skill sets. They can do different things well. They lose their right tackle in a game 2 weeks ago, and the guy who fills in for Matt Womack's a former starting right tackle. So the abundance of riches there in Tuscaloosa is very strong, and I just don't know how you prepare for that, because they can come out and be one of 5 or 6 different offenses at any point in time in the game, and it, not to mention they're running RPOs. They run a lot of play action, and they're running every sort of read option scheme with their quarterbacks that you can imagine. And they change it up really well. Brent Key and Mike Loxley do a nice job in that read option game of, they'll read the 3 technique, they'll read the 5 technique, they'll read the backside in man on the line of scrimmage and kind of try and throw you off and run some quarterback counter off of it. It's very deceptive. And the biggest problem of everything that I just mentioned, they're usually better than you at every position while they're doing all that. So,
there's always that. Hey,
there's that too. So we'll toss that in.
One of my favorite plays we're starting to see, it's kind of making a mini comeback, was a play back from, it was back in the 80s. The Washington Redskins into the 90s made sort of famous. That was their signature play of the counter tray. And
Yep.
teams are starting to run this a lot more. Now they may be replacing that tackle, with a backside H or even a motioning back or somebody. But all those same principles and that play is starting to make a comeback, and you're seeing some huge type holes, especially when you consider that spread look inside.
Well, I think some other things I'm seeing too, Randy, is the way that teams, not even on a counter trey, but maybe on an outside zone, or power play, is teams are just go ahead and pulling that backside tackle because you're essentially just wasting him on that cutoff block. If you have strong flow, you're not going to get up to a weak side linebacker because he's running like crazy, and that guy's got to be sort of an alley defender now, and he can probably run a 4.45 or 4.5, and so you're not catching him, and you're reading that backside defensive end anyway. So go ahead and pull him around, and maybe you end up with an extra blocker. If you don't, like you just said, that sometimes that backside cutoff play, which I think a lot of teams are running by design, they're kind of running inside zone to make it look like counter, but they're not really blocking counter. They're just taking the cutback immediately because they know flow is going to be so strong. So there's so many different ways you can be creative with the read game now because there's so many different things you can do.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, keeping it in the state of Alabama, and you do a radio show Monday through Friday down there in Alabama. So you're going to be talking a little War Eagle at some point this morning?
I have a feeling that'll be for 4 hours of my show on WJOX in Birmingham. That may be a bit of a topic of conversation. They're struggling, and this has been. I was going to mention with that Georgia deal. Auburn beats Arkansas by 31 a few weeks ago, and fans were ready to get the coach fired. And I'm just like, guys, you're number 8 in the country, and you just beat an SEC West opponent by 30 points, and you're mad. We've kind of gotten to that point in college football now. This is the most disappointing thing to me in all college football. This is a little off base of the Auburn discussion now, but just winning a game is not acceptable anymore. Like, fans can't be happy with a win. I remember when I played. I mean, I don't care if it was La Tech or Central Florida. If we won the game, we were happy. We knew we needed to improve. There were things to work on, but everybody just wants this bludgeoning like Alabama's putting on everybody else, and it's not realistic. So, but as far as Auburn goes, the offensive line, you replaced 4 starters. You had 3 guys that were transfers that started on that offensive line last year. Darius James came from Texas. Austin Golson came from Ole Miss. And you had a center who named Casey Dunn that came from Jacksonville State, was a 5th-year guy that actually played some really good football for them down the stretch. And Golson could move around. He started at 3 different positions, played 4 different positions. Braden Smith's a 2nd-round draft pick to the Colts. You lose all those guys. It's going to be difficult to sort of replicate that. And as you know, with the lack of full pad practice in spring ball and in fall practice, it's very difficult to build that continuity as an offensive line because you're very limited in the amount of time that you're able to do it full speed. So I think that's a lot of what we're seeing at Auburn right now. And by the way, they don't have the SEC Offensive Player of the Year and Kerryon Johnson toting the football behind.
Yeah, and that is, while you're talking about with the offensive line and even the running game, has translated into the guy that's taken the most heat, well, besides the coach making all the money, but Stidham at quarterback. People are looking at him sideways now. And it's not like he's a different quarterback, but that's a different offense.
It is. And that's an offense that's predicated by the downhill run game. And people see the tempo or people see the formations and the personnel and they say, well, no, it's not. It's a spread offense. But they don't get going until they can run the ball right at you because that forces you to play them differently. And that opens up the screen games, which then give them some of the shots down the field, play action, things of that nature. So they put a lot of window dressing behind it. But the disappointing part for me watching the Mississippi State film was that Mississippi State didn't really do anything. I mean, they played a base 4-2, base 4-3. They gave a couple pressure looks every now and then. And 2 of the bigger runs that Boobie Whitlow had, you had an inside linebacker that took himself out of the play. So the execution still wasn't even on point to where it should have been when they were finding some success. And if defenses are going to be able to sit in base and be able to minimize the success like they did Saturday night. Now, not everybody's got the personnel that State has. I mean, Montez Sweat's going to be an early round draft pick at defensive end. Jeffrey Simmons may be a top 10, 15 pick at nose guard. So they've got some guys that not a lot of other teams have, but still to be able to sit in your base defense and give a team that many headaches, that's kind of scary looking forward. And you're right about Jarrett Stidham. He's got a ton of talent, throws a beautiful ball, but he's not confident right now. And I truly believe that. He is not confident with what they're doing. He's not confident with what's going to happen when the ball is snapped. I'm sure some of that has to do with protection. Some of it has to do with maybe what he's allowed to do or what the actual play call is or the amount of routes that are being run on a particular play. But there needs to be some serious soul searching done
Yeah.
in that Auburn locker room and that Auburn coaching meeting room on the offensive side of the ball, because yes, the defense gave up some yards in that game, but how long are you going to ask them to hold teams to 14, 17 points to give you a real chance to win?
Yeah, we had some undefeated teams go down this weekend in college football. How much cannibalization are we going to see here in the next couple of weeks? This is going to be so much fun watching some of these teams start to sort of pick each other off.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. When you look at the top 10, 15, how many different games you're going to get with those teams that are there. We got LSU, Georgia this week, Alabama and Georgia, or Alabama and LSU obviously still have to play. Alabama and Georgia both play Auburn, who's a little bit outside of the top 20, I believe, right now. Obviously Oklahoma and West Virginia still have to play. They may play twice. Texas has to play West Virginia down the road. That's obviously going to be a lot of fun. Clemson's got a South Carolina team that got a big win. I don't know if there's another team that I feel can really challenge their schedule.
Mm-hmm.
The team that we should all maybe be talking about is Notre Dame. And, they've become a little bit more balanced at quarterback now. And none of us, guys like you and I, thought that losing McGlinchey and Nelson, that offensive line, could be anywhere near what it was a season ago when they won the Jordan Moore Award. But, they got a good run game going. They're playing some nasty defense. They're physical up front on defense. And I don't know how many tests they have left, especially the way they just handled Virginia Tech. But they do have USC on the schedule. And they do have Florida State on the schedule, even though they don't look like what anyone thought they were going to look like. But still, that's a team that I think maybe we need to be talking about. But it's always fun when we get to this point in the season, because now it's like every week now. Georgia's got Kentucky in a few weeks. I know they just lost to A&M, but Kentucky's a tough team this year. Their offensive line's playing really good ball.
Oh,
Benny
yeah.
Snell's a really good running back. So this is where every week we're going to start having some of those knockout games where it's going to be survive in advance for some teams, and some teams are going to find themselves on the outside looking in.
Yeah, and I still hold to the fact that if Notre Dame was to lose a game here in the last 6 or 7, they still have a chance to get in that playoff with one loss, just because they're Notre Dame and just because you're going to see so many teams start, entering that one-loss club.
I think the only problem with that would be they're going to need some perception wins down the stretch, and I don't know if they have them. I don't think Army can be one of those. Florida State doesn't look like one.
Navy doesn't look like it's going to be one.
So who's that game that from here on out that they can win and sort of wow the committee? If, like you said, this is a big if, but if let's just say there's 3 undefeated teams or 2 undefeateds and an obvious one loss. So they're going neck and neck with 3 other one-loss teams or 4 other one-loss teams, or even a 2-loss team that's being mentioned, and they're sitting there undefeated or a one-loss team, and they haven't really wowed anybody the last 5-6 weeks of the season. So I think that's an interesting. I'm doing the mock college playoff committee this week in Dallas. I'm really excited to just kind of go see how it works, what it looks like, and have a better idea of that entire process.
Have fun. That's going to be great. Hey, last question on the way out. I'm looking at 3 undefeated teams, and I'm a college football fan. Who do I put the most credence in right now? Colorado, Cincinnati, or UCF?
UCF is a damn good football team. Mackenzie Milton is one of the better quarterbacks in all of college football, not just a group of 5. And I had their game against Auburn for radio. I was on the sideline last year. Here's what separates them from a lot of other teams that we will talk about in this manner, as in teams that maybe don't belong, maybe belong.
Mm-hmm.
Go watch their defensive line. They've got real dudes on the D-line.
Yep.
That are 300 pounds, that look like they should be playing in the SEC or the ACC, that can run, that can move, that are quick. And they have some guys up front that can be extremely physical. Now, the offensive line is not exactly the same way, but I think you take what they did last year and you sort of marry that with what Josh Heupel does, which is getting rid of it quick, going fast, utilizing tempo a little bit. I don't really have a lot of doubts, even though their schedule is not anywhere near what a lot of other teams are. I truly believe that Central Florida could easily be one of the 10 best football teams in college football.
Yeah.
I really do believe that.
Yeah, I mean, this will kind of piss off UCF fans, but I put their ceiling personally at like 7 to 8, which is considered
awesome. It's impressive.
It's fantastic, but it's considered a left-handed compliment because we only get 4 in the tournament. Well, for now.
Yep, I agree. They would have. You're going to need a perfect storm, And they had a pretty nice non-conference schedule this year. They needed FAU to beat Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Then they do what they did to FAU. You know, they needed the non-conference games on their schedule. And even if they would have gotten that game against North Carolina, I think it got canceled. That wasn't going to count for anything because North Carolina's not very good. But
it's at least that's a Power 5 team.
Sure. Yeah. They needed the non-conference to have really good years that they played, and they needed some teams in conference to have huge years. Yeah. Have monster years to even sniff the playoff. It's unfortunate part of what we do. It's not a perfect system, but I'm all about giving Central Florida credit for what they do because they are a really, really good football team.
Hey, Cole, really thanks a lot for making everybody a little bit smarter and bringing your insight to college football. Appreciate it, man. All
right, Randy. Thanks for having me, man.
And have fun with the whole War Eagle thing later.
Oh, yeah. That'll be 4 hours of fun radio today.
All right, Cole. Thanks a lot.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye. All right, great stuff from Cole. And Cole can go now. And he is going to have a lot of fun talking about his Auburn Tigers all 4 hours today. Hey, that's a great lead into Unsafe Spaces Sports. All right, we're talking a little bit of college football to start with here. And there were some pretty nice games this last weekend. Let's start off with the big dog. And the big dog, as Cole and I were just discussing, is Alabama. Alabama beat Arkansas about the head and everywhere else, 65-31. They are clearly the best team in college football. Score number 2, the Dogs took on Vandy at Georgia and dealt with them pretty well, 41-13. We're starting to get that time of the year where you look at games and say, did they really beat them by enough? Notre Dame went to Virginia Tech, and they played their last opponent that is currently ranked in the top 25 and dealt with Virginia Tech pretty well, especially late. Big, long, I think like 98-yard run, and Ian Book was throwing the ball extremely well. The defense looked good. It was a good performance by Notre Dame. Another great performance by Florida. Dan Mullen had the Gators going, and they took out LSU, who was ranked number 5 in the country down in the swamp in Florida. That was a lot of fun to watch. Oklahoma, Texas, the Red River rivalry. Early wasn't much of a game. Oklahoma came steaming back, and Kyler Murray almost pulled off the upset, but Texas kicks a field goal right at the end. Texas is now 5-1 after that opening loss to Maryland, and they're going to be a top 10 team if they can maintain this style of play. They're going to be right there at the end. It sets up a heck of a match with West Virginia. A big disappointment, and we talked to Cole Cubelic about this. Auburn played Mississippi State, and Mississippi State just strummed them, 23-9. It was something to see, and like Cole mentioned, and I'll reinforce, this is just a different Auburn team right now, and not different good. I'm talking about different bad. The next game up, Ohio State, who played that great game week before against Penn State at night and out there at at Penn State. They played Indiana this week, and they dealt with them pretty severely, 49-26, and that's the way they're going to have to keep winning. Another fantastic game. Florida State got out to a big lead on Miami, and Miami came steaming back, and they beat them 28-27 right at the wire. And one of the unbeatens that went down this week in college football was Kentucky. Poor Kentucky. Heck, poor Kentucky. They're 5-1. That's pretty tall cotton for Kentucky. Let's see how they keep doing, because the East is there for the taking, and we'll see if they can take advantage of it. The big dog there is the Dogs of Georgia, and they meet up here pretty quick. All right, let's go on to the NFL and some of the games that happened yesterday. We'll go through these pretty quick. Dallas and Houston. Houston won that game 19-16. What a shame. Anytime Dallas doesn't win, my old Niner days kind of come out in me, and I say that's a good thing. Jacksonville and Kansas City. Ooh, Kansas City put it to them. They were shutting them out for a while. Kansas City's for real now. They not only are about an offense, they're actually got a pretty good defense too, because they tortured Blake Bortles when he wasn't just handing him the ball. Atlanta played Pittsburgh yesterday. Well, they said they played Pittsburgh, especially late. They laid down and played dead in the fourth quarter, and Pittsburgh cooperated and scored a couple late touchdowns and made it look pretty ugly. But Atlanta's got a lot of injuries. That's their excuse, and they're sticking to it. Next up on the hit parade is Minnesota and Philadelphia. This was a heck of a game that was decided late on a field goal. Minnesota wins 23-21, and the Eagles are now 2-3. And speaking of field goals, the Giants went to Carolina. Cam Newton in Carolina drives down with basically in overtime, no time left, even in overtime, like 6 seconds when they snapped the ball. And Graham Gano hits a 63-yard field goal to win the game. That was some exciting football. Okay, we've got college football, we've got NFL. How about a little baseball? And I'll be honest, Yankees and Red Sox, that's as good as it gets in baseball. And I'm so glad these two teams are together. First time since 2004. Yeah, 2004 since they met in the playoffs. And a lot of those old, great, nasty games seem like it was only yesterday. But that series right now is tied at 1-1. They'll play game 3 here tonight. And the other playoff games that I was very interested in were the Dodgers and the Braves. Dodgers were off to a 2-0 lead in the series. One more game, and they win the NLDS. Well, the Braves came to play. Acuna hit a grand slam yesterday, and they can't throw Kershaw for the next one. But this was a fun game in Atlanta. I'm glad they got a chance to win. Check this out.
Clay, can you ask Charlie and Callie if they wanted you to finish the ninth?
Did you want Dad to finish?
No. See, yeah, she does.
No, Daddy. Pitches don't finish. They go 5, and then the bullpen comes in. Or in Kershaw's case, they go 7, and then the bullpen comes in. Good stuff. Dodgers are ahead 2-1 right now in that series. And if you watched any of the UFC fights Saturday night, Colin McGregor, a lot of crazy, nasty stuff about his fight there with Nurmagomedov. Did a pretty crazy thing, and I don't mean choking out Conor McGregor. I mean everything that happened after he choked out Conor McGregor. Go.
It's on the chin.
There's the tap. Still undisputed. Khabib Nurmagomedov has finished Conor McGregor tonight.
Look at him. Look at him screaming at the corner. He's screaming at Dylan Dennis, Conor McGregor's jiu-jitsu coach. Look at him. Oh,
And
no,
now Khabib jumps the fence.
No.
Whoa! No! And he's going right at Dylan Dennis. Mayhem! Oh no! Total chaos here. It looks like UFC security has corralled Khabib Nurmagomedov. Well, Khabib wasn't kidding when he said no handshake after the fight.
Uh-oh.
Oh! And now one of Nurmagomedov's teammates throws a right hand at Conor. All hell has broken loose!
This is crazy.
And this is not...
Yeah, well, Dana White, the head of the UFC, I know the Fertitta brothers, they sold out the UFC, but Dana White, who's there running that thing, something needs to be done. Now, they're holding Nurmagomedov's purse right now. They released Conor McGregor's. That's asinine. And for a sport that's crazy, that's even over the top and crazy for UFC. That's the kind of stuff you just can't see. But, you know, that's That's what happens when professional sport turns into a pub brawl. So now you know. All right, let's move on to the Wambulance. Oh, I bet she had a bad weekend. Oof. But I digress. John Cena, you know John Cena from the, professional wrestler. He showed up the other night looking like this. Now, that's not quite what you're used to seeing John Cena look like. John Cena's got that kind of squared away, crew cut look. And Twitter just savaged John Cena in his new haircut. My favorite was when they started running here it is. Tell me that's not pretty close. John Cena and Homer Simpson with hair. That's not bad. That's not bad. I don't know. John Cena with hair kind of looks like Brian Urlacher now with hair when you think about it. But yeah, that sort of wins our Wambulance effort of the week. If you're willing to do something like that and show up looking like that, you don't win a Wambulance award, but that's a heck of a transformation. Nice t-shirt, by the way. All right, that'll do it for the Wambulance this week. Coming up next, kind of a nice little feel-good story.
I'm on top of the world, 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 I'm on top of the world.
Yeah, I can't get enough of these kind of stories, where people take care of each other. And lately we've seen this all happen. A lot of it's happening in restaurants, fast food places and whatnot. But this particular story was pretty amazing because we had a gentleman show up at a restaurant, a Waffle House, I believe, that really couldn't cut his own food. He was getting kind of weak, and he asked the young lady waiting on him at the counter if she could help. She cuts up all his food, everything else. And you know how this whole thing about good stories, what goes around tends to come around? Well, there's a happy ending to this too. Because not only did she get that proclamation they're talking about, it's fantastic. People like this, good things should happen to them. And good things did happen to this young lady. Congratulations, and hopefully more to come. Check out this video.
Things move fast during the breakfast rush at this Lamarck, Texas Waffle House.
You gotta move fast.
You have to.
But you gotta keep your pace. You need more coffee?
But for one brief moment, waitress Avani Nini Williams slowed down. A man eating at the counter needed help cutting his ham. Another customer snapped this picture. What did he ask you?
He's like, my hand's not working too good. I just got at the hospital for it. And you could tell. It was very, very shaky.
The picture went viral. An older man, an oxygen tank visible between his legs, sitting at the counter, and 18-year-old Nini cutting the man's food. Laura Wolf took the picture.
A picture's worth 1,000 words.
Right.
What's one word for that picture?
Kindness.
When did you know people were talking about you?
Later that day.
How?
Facebook. What can I do for you?
78-year-old Adrian Charpentier is the elderly man she helped.
I felt great that she done it for me. I'm very thankful.
The mayor of Lamarck was also thankful when he saw the picture.
Ebony Nini Williams Day.
And proclaimed March 8th Ebony Nini Williams Day, making this 18-year-old emotional.
City of Lamarck.
A day named after me, you wouldn't cry?
What'd you do on your day?
Work.
But the biggest surprise came from Texas Southern University, which gave her a $16,000 scholarship. She plans to study business management, but this teenager has already shown she knows how to take care of customers.
Good for Texas Southern, good for Waffle House, and good for Nini. Those are the kind of stories we need more of because, heck, we know the news is full of the exact polar opposite of those kind of stories. All right, want to remind you, where can you find Unsafe Spaces? Well, you can go to Twitter, you can go to Facebook, you can go to YouTube, you can go to SoundCloud, you can go to unsafespacesusa.com, you can go to randycross.com. If you have any suggestions for stories, recommendations, it's producer at unsafespacesusa.com. Time now for us to say to you a little football happy trails.
Happy trails to you. Until we meet again. Who cares about the cloud when we're together? Just sing a song and think about sunny weather. Happy trails to you. Till we meet again.